Okay, we're back for part 2 and the link between osmosis and tonicity. A little bit of a reminder, this should be familiar. Osmosis is a diffusion of water across a semi-permeable membrane from a weak solution of ions to a strong solution. This acts to equalise the solute concentration, which may be many different ions, of course, or other species, as long as they're dissolved in water. Another way of looking at osmosis is something called water potential. Water diffuses by osmosis from a region of high water potential to a region of low water potential through what's known as a water potential gradient, analogous to electrochemical gradients. Osmosis can therefore be defined also as a diffusion of water from a region of high water potential to a region of low water potential through a partially permeable membrane, as shown here. So we're going from more dilute in terms of the solute across the membrane to less dilute in terms of the solute, eventually equalising the solute concentration. Tonicity is defined as the ability of a solution to cause a cell to gain or lose water, and there's definitions there you may have seen before, certainly isotonic you've probably come across, and we'll explain what these are as we go through. There's a good resource here explaining the different cell flaccidities and the effect of hypotonic, isotonic and hypotonic, isotonic and hypertonic solutions on cell turgidity, so well worth having a look at. The ability of an extracellular solution to make water move in or out of cells by osmosis is known as its tonicity. So again, note the different turgidity of cells based on their tonic status. And turgidity refers to the condition of being bloated, distended or swollen, or not in hypertonic situations. Again, see the link resource there for a good review of the process. A commercial summary of the claimed benefits of different sports drinks based on their carbohydrate concentration, but remember our earlier discussion of osmolality versus carbohydrate concentration. So hypertonic drinks have a lower osmolality than water, so potentially promote hydration, tend to have quite a low concentration of electrolytes like sodium. Isotonic drinks have a similar osmolality to blood. They typically provide more energy in the electrolytes than a hypertonic drink, but take a bit longer to enter the bloodstream. As we can see, they contain a little bit more sodium and more carbohydrate. Hypertonic drinks have a higher osmolality than blood, often used as a recovery drink after intense or sustained exercise, for the extra carbohydrates in the lead up to a race. Okay, we'll now move on to body fluid states. As we mentioned earlier on, euhydration is our normal condition, or at least the return to our normal condition, and with increasing dehydration or rehydration being the extremes. The paper linked here, if you click on the image, it should link you through to a paper. If not, it's in the notes. Notes that the assessment of volume and hydration status is far from easy. The graphs show the relationship between water loading and hydration status, with some definitions here. Hypohydration is the uncompensated loss of body water. Hyperhydration, also known as water intoxication or water poisoning, is when the normal balance of electrolytes, such as sodium in the body, is unbalanced by a rapid intake of water. This can seriously affect the brain's ability to function and can even lead to death if medical supervision is not available. I think it's fair to say it's less common than the situation where people are hypohydrated. So hypohydration, a list there of the symptoms. Drinking water electrolytes will alleviate these symptoms, much of which are unlikely in general exercise situations. It's sort of endurance exercise we're talking about here mostly. Hyperhydration, again as mentioned, although drastic, it's seen rather less than hypohydration. But in this case, a treatment may require special medical intervention such as the use of diuretics. There's a summary of the related bodily hydration states from one of the papers which is referenced here. Okay, so fluid loss. Two types, sensible and insensible. Sensible fluid loss is referred to typical routes of excretion such as urination, which we're clearly aware of, that is sensible of. Insensible water loss refers to body loss which we aren't necessarily aware of due to, for example, transdermal diffusion. Water that passes through the skin is lost by evaporation, and evaporative water loss from the respiratory tract, as I mentioned, is termed insensible because we are not aware of it. I should point out this transdermal diffusion is not sweating. This is loss of water from the skin in general, not sweat cells. It's going to happen quite a lot of water loss. The transdermal diffusion, again, not from sweat cells, is pure water, rather than water containing electrolytes such as from sweat. Even small losses in fluid can affect performance, particularly athletic performance. As definition there, hemoconcentration is a decrease in plasma volume which causes simultaneous increase in the concentration of red blood cells and other commonly tested constituents of blood. So there's the initial sort of phases. As losses continue, the negative effects escalate and may become very serious if not treated, which is of course why people hydrate during extended exercise. Some examples of fluid requirements based on a range of activities. This is quite an archaic graph, it seems, hence the use of quarts. Or maybe it's just from an American source where they still use these strange units, which nobody really knows what they are anymore. Just one example of how water impacts on performance, in this case measures power output. If you're interested in this, click on the link for the, in this case, a meta-analysis of the effect of exercise-induced dehydration on time trial exercise performance. Okay, we mentioned sweating a few times. Let's have a little bit of a chat about sweating. Your skin has about 2.5 million sweat glands, and sweating is a key evolutionary adaptation which, along with other things, allows humans to run for much longer than other mammals. So our distant ancestors could hunt those mammoths down rather than just give up after a few hundred yards. A reprise of some of the issues around hypohydration. Pause the video if you want to have a read of these again. From the perspective of sports nutrition, exercise intensity and time is probably the factor we're most interested in. There is, of course, a big example in, for example, endurance running done in a temperate climate and that done in hot climates, and we can see a graph there illustrating this, and there's probably links to this somewhere else in the notes. This is not the way to cool down. The chap may think he's looking cool, but he's not getting cool. There's a good quote there from Fink et al. So message for exercise. Key take-home message: increased body temperature and heart rate can be minimised by hydration before, during and after exercise. So hydration for exercise. Just to wrap this up. Here's a summary of the potential issues again. Hyponatremia, I've mentioned a couple of times, it's abnormally low blood sodium, as you might guess from the name. Hydration status changes during the day, of course, especially when exercise is done. It can be measured in a number of ways, such as using urine colour charts, for example, and weighing is a sort of gross way of doing this. Okay, that's all, folks. Thanks for listening.